Hey everyone, welcome back here to my channel where I play Planet Zoo. My name is Nissa and today we are building for the Blue Duiker. And as you can see here, this was the only way to show you how we're gonna build this. We're gonna make this a 3-part habitat that have 3 very specific ways of being built. So if you want to go through that with me or just see how I built these different biomes, then please keep watching. Okay guys, as you guys hopefully know by me now, a big part of this channel is just fueled by my love for animals. But another love that I have in my life is just history. I am very excited by weird and wacky history, and sometimes I combine that with this channel. I did that in my bear house Beautyful Zoo video here on this channel. It's was in my playlist for Beautyful Zoo, and it was a bear house where I talk more about the histories of zoos and where they actually came from, and the idea of having these exotic pets in captivity originally wasn't for the public but more a showcase for rich people to just show off their wealth. Again, it is on my channel if you want to go and see that. But what we also talked about is that the idea of actually studying the habits of animals and try to figure out if animals can be happy in captivity and how to make them more or less happy, and just kind of study why the animals do what they do and why we can actually help them, and why some animals simply don't function in captivity and haven't for a while, and how we then can make them function. For instance, animals that never have been breeding in zoos suddenly can, because we give them the right environment and the right enrichments. Some silly things as the idea of frogs not being able to breed in zoos because we didn't give them water where their babies could live and grow. A big part of this came for different angles, some in captivity, literally just stopping up and looking at your animals, something you can do with your everyday pets in your normal home, like your cats and dog. Just simply look at them and try to learn why they do what they do and when they do what they do. For instance, I have 2 very different cats. One just likes to be on her own if we get visitors. Rarely she will be out and about. She will hide most of the time because she's not afraid. She just simply doesn't want people around. She's okay with coming on, just laying on us and being around us. If it's just us, she's very comfortable with that. But she is not this cat that wants to be picked up and cuddled a lot. So we kind of just accept that's how she is and that's what she wants. Where my male cat Neo, who normally lay in the background on when I make videos, he's very cuddly and everyone can just pick him out, and I have seen him play with kids and just run around and play with him. These are 2 very different behaviors that is from the same animal, and therefore we just, as animal keepers, I just have to figure out how we can make the best environment for them and accept the way they work. Now, when we take it into a zoo, there's of course a much bigger difference in these animals, based on the fact that they basically just don't have the same behavior, don't eat the same food, don't function the same way, because there's pretty much a big difference between a deer, a frog, or a giant cat, or anything like that. Very big behavior differences. Therefore, it have taken a while for people to figure out some of these animals, what we can do for them. And for some animals, we are still trying to figure it out. We can still not get them to reproduce in zoos, and that just put the idea in my head that maybe we should not have them in captivity if that's what hinders their reproductive reproductiveness. Some animals you can reuse studies, such as, for instance, last Saturday we talked about the common chimpanzees, where you actually could use research for other apes, such as the orangutan on Borneo, where we have seen this idea of taking often orangutan babies and then put them out in nature later on when they are strong enough to take care of themselves, starting to do that with the chimpanzee, and then later on taking this research and use to with some other primates, being the black and white rough lemurs, kind of reusing the same research. Of course, you need to be very aware that there can be differences, so you cannot always just copy paste the studies, but you can use studies to get an idea and then make a new study for the specific animals. And that's just very, very fascinating, and something I really think more people should talk about, because when we go to zoos, we just kind of have the idea that these animals are fully studied and we know everything about them, and that's just not how the world works, and that's not where we are at the current rate. And even if we come to a part where we know everything about every animals, we should still research and study them, because their behavior can also change over time like ours does. Now, our behavior changes very, very fast because we have the wide internet. We have all of these ways to actually tell each other stuff when we learn something new. Then we tell the others about it, where most animals kind of have to see it because they don't have the same kind of language as we do. And because they change so slowly, sometimes that is also why I am quite comfortable when I use older research. For instance, when we read on the IUCN Red List and something is from the 2014, for instance, it's still good research because most likely animals haven't changed that much since then. However, we need to take into account that some things may have changed, such as, for instance, populations in the wild, and other human factors also in the areas can have changed. Anyway, I'm just mentioning here in the build, these walls I put in here, we just imagined that there's glass in here, because already when I built it, I knew it wouldn't function putting glass in here in the game because they have a certain size, and these are very bendy walls, so it wouldn't work. So we just imagined that there's glass in there. Anyway, this is just to say that all of this idea of researching animals is something we only had done since around 1940. And we're talking around World War II. Before that, yes, there have been kind of research in the shape of, for instance, in Chinese, there have been quite a few poems about cats and the behavior of these specific cats that actually could count for some kind of research, because it is written about the behavior of the animal. However, these are not widespread research on a lot of cats. These are like what I see in this specific cat poems. And because we before that actually didn't have this research, then we didn't know what we could do to help the animals, make them more comfortable, make the world fit them better. But we do now. So we, after the 1940s, started, okay, what can we do to make this habitat better for the animals? And even later than that, we also started, okay, but what can we do for the biodiversity in the habitat? For instance, can we use our habitats in zoo to also kind of breed foliage, like plants, rare plants? Can we have them in these habitats and then kind of reproduce them at the same time? Help the nature out that way too. Can we do different things to always help nature and also to educate our guests about animals? For the longest time, the idea of a zoo was just to, oh, here's a box with the animal in it, let's look at that. And yeah, sorry, I laugh because I'm uncomfortable, but it's the truth about the history of zoos. But over time, some zoos has actually reached a point where a habitat is more of a showpiece, where earlier the animal were the show in itself, but now it's the entire expansive habitat that's the showpiece. This is why when I saw how much space these Blue Duiker had, I just thought the habitat were way too big. It would look really weird with this giant habitat for him. So what I did instead was cut it up to 3 big pieces and then build 3 different habitats from 3 different times in zoo history. Now, I don't make a concrete box for them. I wouldn't do that. But we have the habitat we are at now. It will be the middle habitat where we are okay. They need to move more around. Maybe a little hill will help them out so they use their muscles in a different ways. We put a little bit of things like a fallen tree log in here so they have to go around it, they can jump over it. We have some rocks they can go on, and again, all of these things to make them use their muscles a little differently, but it's still fairly open. They have no way to hide or anything that is their natural habitat. On the opposite side, we have the original habitat, as I would call it, which could have been again a concrete box, but what I did was pretty much just fence it in, food, a barrel with food enrichment, and some trees they can rub themselves off of, and nothing else. You will not see me build a lot in there. And then the third habitat is where we go for the showpiece habitat, that is this very modernized habitat. Now keep in mind that the Blue Duiker live in Africa, that being Angola, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Congo, DR Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, South Africa, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Burundi, and Rwanda. And none of the original 2 or the first 2 habitats will take that into consideration. But the last one will. They also live within the tropical climate zones, and that's why we go really heavy with all of this raw foliage, I will call it. And they stay within the forest and rainforest, and anthropogenic and agricultural biomes. We go for the rainforest because the places they live in agricultural and anthropogenic biomes is not always by choice, so I want to go with that really, really tropical foresty feel. I am aware that I live in Denmark and the 2 first habitat would be kind of easy. You need to dig a little bit to make number 2 and a little bit of flowers to make it pretty and such. But the first one, very easy for every biome. But because I live in Denmark, I also are aware that tropical plants and especially big trees and flowers and such can have a hard time working in this part of the world, basically. So what a lot of zoos will do is going for faux rocks. Again, it could have been an indoor habitat in a big building and it would have worked, but because we are outside, I went with these faux rock. They are all for the faux rock hack mod. It is on my prop mod playlist if you want to look at them. And normally I don't use them a lot because they look extremely fake and they look not that good with the stones from the game always. But for this intended purpose, they work perfectly. And they're flexi-colored, so you could make them green or blue or purple if you want to. But we will still have some trees, and all the trees we go for in here will be like with a 1 stump base, and then they will have a big crown with a lot of leaf, so it will be extremely dark in there also, and fairly quickly give that rainforest vibe to it. Again, because this is an outdoor habitat in a colder climate zone, it will not be easy to have the humidity in there that a lot of the plants would need either. So I do imagine that some of the plants in here, some of the flowers also may be fake. Because I want the idea that this is 3 different habitats, I make sure also to put water in each of them and food in 2 of them. I do not put food in the tropical one because basically I don't have the place for it. But for water, we have like the basic water bowl that will be refilled every day for the oldest variation of the habitat. The medium one, we have this automatic water bowl that where the keepers don't have to refill it every day, and the animals can't tip them over, but it will still be very, very artificial. And then in this more modern variation, the tropical one, then we go in and have this nice little pond where they not only can get a drink of water, but they can also with their feet and take a little swim if that's what they want to. The house part for these 3 habitats are basically the same, but I do take a little different approach to it. Again, for the 2 first, it will just be there. For the first one, it will also be a part of the fence, meaning that it will have the same wood coverage. It is concrete, so it's cheap to make. I chose the 3D concrete, but it could have been any concrete, and then just the wood slapped on top so it looks nice from afar. And then use the same fence around the habitat just to make it cheap, and we use the same things. For habitat 2, the medium habitat, we still have the same house, the same idea that it should look nice from afar, but we don't need to put much money into it. And then for the barrier around the habitat, we go a little more pretty. We make some flowers, we put in this little dark wood edge to it, also because I think the dark wood edge contrasts a little better. The stones actually also around will have this ombre effect. I don't know if you noticed, but I started with the same color as the tropical habitat and then make them more and more cool tone as I went around, just to get a little different feeling when you move around the habitat. For the 3rd habitat, the house won't matter. It will still be there because we want the animals to be able to go inside again. Because we are in a colder climate, these need to be able to go inside, so nothing there. But it will be covered so the guests cannot see it. It will not be an eyesore, so you wouldn't have to have that wood pieces on top. However, in zoos, what they do normally is maybe they make a new beautiful habitat for some animals, but then they go in and repurpose the old habitat for something else. That could be smaller animals, that could be cafeteria, it could be staff building, it could be whatever. So for a modern habitat, you will maybe have a building in the background that you cannot see, but that was originally built for something completely different. Another thing yet again that I think showcased something very important that happened, I think the last 10-15 years really have been showing off, because it certainly wasn't there when I was a kid. And keep in mind, I'm 30 at this point, so I'm kind of old, but we are kind of getting to the point where not old people, especially not people with kids that doesn't have the temperament always to be in a zoo, but most people nowadays have this idea of, well, we want to see the animals, but we want the animals to be comfortable. We want the animals to kind of have a say in whether they want to be looked at. Where once again, the 2 first habitats here is a very, very open, and even though we put trees in here, they are in the background or there's nothing thickness to it. They are very thin, so the animals can in no way hide behind it, and they kind of need to go indoors if they want to get away from the publicum. Where in the tropical, in the 3rd one here, you can see that you will have to put in some time and just be patient and wait if you want to see the animals. Once again, I mentioned that we imagine that there's glass in the fence over here. It could be 2D, it could be 3D. Now, most deers are kind of scarce and don't really like too much attention, so I probably would have went with like half of it. Like everything with the water, I would have made one-way glass, and then the side windows maybe make them normal glass. So we kind of have that both effect. What I find very interesting is the way the game read the animals is that they actually don't use a lot of time in the tropical habitat, where personally I think they would have stayed within here much more, especially because they actually would be able to hide, which once again a lot of habitats and zoos don't allow them to still yet. All of these three habitat is, even though I say one of them is very historical and one of them is medium and one of them are modern, you will probably be able to see all three kind of habitats within the same zoo. Not for the same animal like I did here, but you will see them in the same zoo, because zoos didn't go out in the 1940s and say, well, we need to fix all of this at once, because they basically didn't have the money. Ticket prices for zoos have been much cheaper back then than they are now. I know there is some things you can do to make it cheaper, as I remember. For instance, you have the year-round tour pass that you can get, so you don't pay every single time. You can also, I know here in Denmark, if you have a ticket to one zoo you have been in, and I think within the same week or so visit another zoo, then you can use that ticket to get some a cheaper ticket at zoo number 2. I'm not sure if it's still like that, but it was like that when I was a kid, especially. Again, it's rarely nowadays as I get to multiple zoos in the same week, but there was something like you can get it cheaper if you visit multiple zoos. Besides that, the animals themselves have become cheaper to actually get, because most of the time a lot of these animals, especially the rare ones, are not owned by the zoos, but like owned by a breeding project that they will be a part of. So the breeding project will make sure they get new blood, get new animals, and when their animals get babies, where their babies are supposed to go. So there will be some less money used on that, making it more accessible for the zoos to make better habitats for the animals, of course. There is also limited animals. For instance, in Copenhagen Zoo here in Denmark, we have the Tasmanian devils. That is a gift, or I think they are gifted by the Tasmanian government when our beautiful crown princess from Tasmania married her husband, the crown prince of Denmark. Furthermore, we also have the giant pandas that we are not allowed to own, but we are lended out from the Chinese government. So that's also a way to actually get these animals in a cheaper way, of course. Keep in mind that earlier on it could be kind of an open auction with these kinds of animals, making some animals kind of unsellable and other animals very expensive. Anyway, I will just remind you that these three habitat is kind of my take on it. I do not build very realistic habitats. I normally say I would go for possible habitat, but the hyper-realistic part of it is not something I do, because I think sometimes it kills my kind of my inspiration about it. So I'm leaving that alone. Some Planet Zoo players are very good at that part, but it's not what I do. But this was kind of my thought experiment about all of these things, and I had so much fun about this, especially because when I was a kid, I had like bearded dragon, and I had like some turtles, not sea turtles, but I had some turtles and such. And we built like out in the garden for the turtles, these kind of big enclosure. And I think it's best presented in this case by Habitat 2, the one you're looking at right now. Where we kind of just made it pretty for us to look at, but we didn't really go in and research. Now, these were from Russia, so it wasn't these very tropical variations of them, but we didn't really give them anything specific for that because it was simply not something we thought about. We thought more so about just the idea of it's gonna be pretty for us to have them in the garden, and we're gonna make this little hill and this little water area pretty for us once again, not for them. And it's just something where I think that we as a species, as humans, have learned so much the last few years, and I recommend that everyone just take a look at their animals, whether they be exotic or not, and just take a look at them and the way they live, and just think about, could we do it better? Could we make these animals happier? I just need to mention right away here, as you can see, the picture on these screens are from the zebra duiker, not the blue one, and that's simply a mistake because the UI pictures are taken wrong. The modders have told me that they are gonna fix it, but it's not a high priority. They have a few other mods they work on right now, so it will be fixed at some time. But for now, it's just the pictures. Everything else works, so we're gonna live with that. Before I leave you completely to the cinematics, I will just mention the reason I put Blue Duikers in my zoo is basically because this is a Smalzie Zoo. We are going with small animals, and this is the smallest duiker in the world and one of the smallest deer species in the world. It is beautiful, and when I made the mod video, I just fell in love with it, so I just had to build it. There is currently about 7 million of them in the world, and therefore they are least concerned animal according to the IUCN Red List. They are, however, very beautiful, and yeah, just for now enjoy the cinematics, and I will come back afterwards. Okay guys, that's all I got for you today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and as always, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you know the next time I upload a video. I really hope to see you again, either in the comments below or in the next video. Bye guys!